thank you all very, very much for coming. It's absolutely fantastic to see you all here. And it gives me enormous pleasure to welcome you to our little bookshop as well, Glenn. Thank you very, very much for coming. As I said to you, I'm not going to say much because I just end up burbling, so I'm going to hand over to Glenn. And at the end, there's an opportunity to buy copies of this book, drink some cheese, drink some wine and have some cheese, and have a chat with you afterwards. So
awesome.
Over to you. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you very much. It's neat to be out on a Thursday night in Tony and to be in a bookshop, you know, and to be talking about poetry and with people who want to come and listen to poetry talks on a Thursday night. So I've brought along what I call my totems, and it's hard to explain the totems until I start working with them, and then hopefully they kind of make sense. But by way of background, when I was a young man, I was lucky enough to go to Northland. I had a friend who came from a little community there called Te, and I went and lived there for a year, and it's a small Māori community in the Bay of Islands. And I just started to write poetry, and I wrote The Art of Walking Upright, my first book of poetry about the people at Te. And it was a really important experience for me. It always felt like I did my OE as a young man in my own country, you know. And it was also a joyful year, you know. I all of a sudden inherited all these aunties and uncles and got taught how to eat fish heads and go fishing and tie swivels and bake bread and play housey and do lots and lots of dishes. And but one of the things I noticed when I would be at the marae was that Māori were using poetry all the time. I would hear words used, and poetry used in ways that it wasn't used in the Pākehā world. And poems were chanted, sung and poemed. And that got me really curious about sung poetry, and I realised for the first time in my life, even though I had an arts degree in English, and yet no one had ever really pointed out to me that we have an existing oral tradition of poetry in our country. And you know, again, one of those stories that's not told. So I developed a real interest in sung poetry, and it seemed so powerful. I would, you know, be at the marae sometimes at a tangi, and up in Northland you can come any time onto the marae, even in the middle of the night. And so you'd wake up, I remember waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to, you know, karanga calling people onto the marae, people who had travelled for hours to come up to see a relation who had died. And there'd be lots of nudging, and a couple of old people would sit up on the pai and welcome those people, and everyone else would kind of sleep, and there'd be a song, and I'd hear people singing in the middle of the night, these old chanted songs. I didn't understand what they were singing, but I knew that they were talking to the dead, you know, and they would take off. And I thought, when I read a poem, it doesn't seem to carry the same power. There's something that's sung, and there's a commitment in it. And I kind of came to realise that if this is the history of poetry, this is the history of poetry that's written down, you know, that all our cultures sung their stories and sung their poems. And in fact, poetry was a sung art form, and it came from, you know, a very few impulses to get the boy or girl, you know, display our feathers, to reach out and try and give voice to loss, yeah, or the smallness of being human in the face of some very big weathers and events and a cantankerous set of geographies and gods, to entertain, to make people dance, to bring joy, to make you tap your foot. To use as maps, to say go here, go left, go 3 streets down, first on your left. You know, elaborate maps and word maps, and they're chanted so that they could be easily remembered or rhymed. And early science, why am I here? What does it all mean? The poetry came from those impulses. When it got written down, it started to get clever because you could read poems over and over again. So you can get really elaborate. And I love elaborate written down poems. I still love the written poems. But there's a power in the sung poem because it only has 1 or 2 primary colours. So I got interested in that, and I started writing a book when I had my daughter, because there's a genre of Māori poetry called ori-ori, or poems that are written, oral poems that are written or sung to children. The English equivalent is a lullaby, but ori-ori are not really lullaby in that sense. They're quite serious in terms of giving young children their whakapapa and their place in the world. Sometimes tasks to perform, very specifically written to that specific child. So I thought I'd write some ori-ori to my daughter, and then I worked on some poems in Te Reo Māori for many, many years. And that made me ask the question, as a Pākehā, where's my unsung poetry? I would go to marae and people would say, waiata boy, waiata. And I would start off by singing, you know, I was horrified that you would have to sing. It was bad enough you would have to speak, and then to have to sing is like, oh my God, this is a savage people. No, just and I would start off by singing, you know, grabbing the only thing I had, which was love me tender, love me true, and singing Elvis, and then thinking, I don't really think that matches up more than you know. So then I thought, well, and I remember one of the aunties that I used to talk to a lot, she said to me, go and find your own songs, go and tell me, I want to hear about your people. And that's, you know, my experience was that Māori up in Te Tii were singing about their own people and their own stories. So then I started writing myths and legends of the ancient Pākehā, you know. Because often I would talk to Pākehā who had been to marae and they're like, we got those songs, we got those stories. And I'm like, actually, we do. And what I love about Māori oral poetry is it's like having a hymn book in your back pocket. If you need a sad song or a happy song, a cheeky song, a longing song, you've always got something that's been written to someone very specifically, but it works. So I wanted a range of songs that I could take and sing on the marae and say, these are the primary colours of my people. And also I think there's something vulnerable in a song. Pākehā, we've come over and over again with fences and forms to fill out and officiousness and lists to Māori, but we very rarely reveal our heart, the heart of our culture. And when you sing a song, you reveal some vulnerability about it. You can see the whites of someone's eyes. So I think there's a real powerful psychology in singing. I don't think it's just something benign that you do. And so that's the preamble. All these also Māori, of course, have totemic structures that hold their stories. Whakairo, po, representing characters that hold their mauri, their energy, their physical presence. So I wanted some totemic structures that could carry those characters I was writing about, and in a sense carry the poem. So these are my ways of taking poems out of books and putting them in the mouths of these little people. And so it made sense when I think about it. I stand back sometimes, I think, I I could just be crazy. Maybe that's the better explanation. But it has brought a huge amount of warmth and colour and story to my life, and I have 3 trays of these now sitting at home. All the characters and myths and legends of the ancient Pākehā and in the 3 women. So they can take me all over the place and sing many different energies. So, having said all that, I feel like a kind of mad poetry professor for the last 20 years in my back shed, just working on little poems. And I started painting these totems up, and then I got friends who are artists and kids at the clinic I work in who are great at art, and we've done some. So they carry lots of different energies, and I thought I would just bring them down. I'll start off with one, and then usually they reach out and they tap you on the shoulder and they go, pick me. So I'll get you to, I'll start off with one, and then you can pick one, and I'll tell you who they are and sing you their oral poem. I think of it as an oral poem. If I think I'm singing to you, I get quite nervous. And yeah, and then if you don't like it, it's your own fault for choosing that. So you need to just pretend like we're in a small book, wharenui, a whare of books full of stories, and think of all the characters that sit in this hover, in this bookshop, all these stories floating around. It's a great place to read, and we're the tribe, we're book people, and we're around the fire at night telling the stories of the tribe. So we have to sort of bring a little person out. What shall I start with? I'll start with this one. This is the one totem I have that isn't in this image. This is I know what this is. This is a couple of years ago I wrote a collection of poems for children, nursery rhymes, about different New Zealand animals, but not the ones that get all the glory, like fantails and kiwis and tui. I wanted the ones that don't get a lot of glory. I stumbled across the pūriri moth. Have you seen pūriri moth? They're amazing. And Māori call them ghost moths because for some iwi they believe they go between the living and the dead carrying messages. And if you've seen a pūriri moth come in the window in the middle of the night, they kind of do seem quite ghostly, but it's sort of grey-green look. And this is a small nursery. I'm hoping one day the nursery rhymes will come out as a book. I'm waiting for the illustrator's about halfway through the illustrations at the moment. So it's an advanced preview of my nursery rhyme for the pūriri moth. But it's a good one to start with because it kind of is about bringing the dead to life and listening to what they have to tell us. So the pūriri moth. If I just go la la la, don't laugh at me. I'm getting quite old and forgetful. Pūriri moth, whisper your secrets, tell me what the news is of the hows and whys of all who live on the other side. Te Oprah, Napoleon, Nebuchadnezzar and Saladin, my uncle and auntie, my grandma too, Yogi the Bear and Winnie the Pooh. For here is there and where is what, the is not, it is so, the is so, is not, the inside is outside, the downside is what the upside grew out of before it was. Pūriri moth, pūriri moth, carry my secrets, I'll tell you what. roses of all those that hide on the side of the moonlight. We sing, we dance, we can, we can't. We try to, we cry to, we tell, we ask. We walk, we run, we stand our ground. Some days we spin around and round. Oh, we will be forget-me-nots as long as you visit Puriri-Mott. Carry our secrets, the hows and whys of all who live on the other side. Nebuchadnezzar and Saladin, my uncle and auntie, my grandma too, Yogi the bear and Winnie the Pooh. For here is there and where is what. He is not, it is so, he is so, is not. The inside is outside, the downside is what the upside grew out of before it was. We sing, we dance, we can, we can't. We try to, we cry to, we tell, we ask. We walk, we run, we stand our ground. Some days we spin around and round. Poo-dee-dee-mott, poo-dee-dee-mott. Poo-dee-dee-mott, poo-dee-dee-mott. Poo-dee-dee-mott, poo-dee-dee-mott. Poo-dee-dee-mott, poo-dee-dee-mott. So I hope we get nice and haunted now. Always just gotta find.
Have you got a little peg on the bottom? Does it sit on a peg?
Exactly. Yeah. Because otherwise one falls.
Yeah.
It's like 10-pin bowling. Okay, so that's kind of what they do. They all have a secret voice. Does anyone want to choose one? It's like you're 5 years old and you're sitting up, whoever's sitting up straight on the mat. Yeah.
I reckon that tall fella at the back's looking at me. So.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. This, I'm not sure exactly which politician it is, but it represents a politician. And when I was writing Myths and Legends, I was interested in using as many different oral forms of poetry. I took the idea, what are the ways that English poetry arrived in New Zealand in sung form or chanted form? And so sea shanties and hymns and nursery rhymes. But one of the ways was clapping songs and skipping songs. So when I grew up in a small church, and when I was growing up, we were taught a song to remember all the books of the Bible. And it's not part of my belief structure anymore, but the day I die, I will still know the books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. And I thought, okay, how do I write a skipping song or a clapping song about an equally useless piece of information? So I thought I would take all the premiers and prime ministers in New Zealand history in order and write a skipping song about them. See how many you can recognise. Let's see if I can get through it. You can use it as a clapping song or skipping song. This is from Myths and Legends, and if you go to my website, the soundtrack for Myths and Legends in 3.1 so you can. I had the kids at Levin Primary School record this as a clapping song. So it's much better when kids do it. You've got a much better sense of rhythm. But here we go. For what it's worth, premiers and prime ministers, a clap track. Sul, Billy Fox, tick tock, Edward Stafford Head and Hatted, Alfie Dommett writing sonnets, Whitaker, Inner Blur, Freddie Welder is at Sir Waterhouse, sort of in and sort of out, Queen Vic, Bag of Tricks, Archie, Toodlepit, Vogel, Going, Global, Pollen, Solon, Come and Gone, and Dirty Harry Atkinson, Settling in, T-Engine, Hal Gray, George Gray, Johnny Hall, Who Can Say, Kelp Sprout, Robbie Stout, Balance In and Balance Out, Wakey, Matey, Give the Boys a Shake Up, Katie. King Dick said, and looking down on us in heaven, Hall Jones, All Bones, Ward Gord, Either All, Tom McKenzie, Reassembly, William Massey, Khaki, Happy, Bell, Coates, Good Folks, George Ford, all aboard, Wall Street, Fall Street, Bully Beat, Frozen Me, Mickey Savage, Bread and Cabbage, Say a Prayer to Him, Each Sabbath, Fraser, Blessed Saviour, No Time Off for Good Behaviour, Holy, Mickey Savage, Bread and Cabbage, Say a Prayer to Him, Each Sabbath, Fraser, Blessed Saviour, No Time Off for Good Behaviour, Holland, Drolland, Taunting, Morphe's, Holy Ochre, Little Porty, Nash, Budget Black, Marshall Mallow, Nicer Fella, Gat, What's That, EC, No Turning Back, Norm Kirk, Gone to Church, William Rolling, Out of Work, Piggy, Wiggy, Round and Wiggling, David Longy, T and Scotty, Jambry Palmer, Michael Moore, In the Window, Out the Door, Bolger, Shipley, Spard, Angela, P. Clark, The Herald, Angelson, Johnny Key, You and Me, 1, 2, 3, 4, English Art, and any more, 5, 6, 7, 8. Round them up, shut the gate, wine, question time, take a seat, stand in line, here, lend an ear, call a little lardle dear, here, lend an ear, here we go, around the here. There you go. I don't have Chris Hitkins and I don't have Chris Squared in there, but I published the book before, yeah, so I'll need a volume 2, so, yeah, so I need to get it working as a skipping song. Anyone who's brave enough to?
The guy just in front of him to his right looks a bit like one of my ancestors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Possibly is.
There you go. Yeah. So this man is called Henry Cliff Colquhoun, and he's my great grandfather, and he. There's an interesting story about him. We grew up, because Colquhoun is a Scottish name, of course, and so we grew up with my grandmother reminding us all the time how Scottish we were. And so when I got older, I was really interested in the family history, so I tried to track down Henry Cliff, and Henry Cliff came from Edinburgh to Northland in 1875, and he died there about 15 years later. He was only 40, and he's buried at Christ Church in Russell, the old church that Honeyheki shot up. So his tombstone is there, and when I go back up north, I always go visit him, because it was him coming here that brought the rest of the family. When we went looking for Henry Cliff, we couldn't find him. And Henry Cliff Colquhoun, we couldn't find him, and the clan historian, the Colquhoun clan historian, spent a couple of years and finally tracked down the story that he was actually born Henry Cliff in Preston in the north of England, and was English. And as my grandmother had already died, so I couldn't tell her. I probably wouldn't have anyway. She would have broken her heart. But Henry, of course, is not a Scottish name whatsoever. And the story was that he was born in 1851 to Annie, his mum, and Annie was a young unmarried woman. And so to solve the problem of Henry being born out of wedlock, the doctor who delivered him took him and gave him to his sister. His sister, Sophia, was married to a man called James Colquhoun of Edinburgh. And so Henry Cliff grew up as a Colquhoun. And then he came out here as a remittance man. I think he was a troubled man. The family story was that he had done many things. You know, Pākehā have all these stories about their ancestors who had fought in this war and got medals or have huge inheritance. He was supposed to have fought in these wars. He was supposed to have an inheritance waiting for him and be fabulously wealthy in Scotland. He was supposed to have been an alcoholic and died after a binge in the Bay of Islands and getting aspiration pneumonia and dying afterwards. Looking through all of that, though, all of that kind of got debunked as we went looking for stories, and it seemed like he recreated a life here out of things that were peripherally true back in Scotland. And I think that's a story of Pākehā ancestors sometimes. They came and created a new life here. And yeah, when I looked at Papers Plus, he actually died. I don't know if it's a better story or worse than dying after a binge, but he actually died. There's a story in Papers Plus because there was an inquest into his death. He actually died because his wife administered too much sleeping elixir to him. Okay. So, Henry Cliff. So this is a song about, for me, a very Pākehā song about having ancestors who said they were one thing and then came here and said they were another thing because they could start again. And it's called The Ballad of Henry Cliff. Oh, where a man's headed is dreaded, and where a man is he is not. Though nothing I'm certain's less certain, for certain than where he is from. I'm wanted, it's said and done, Barton. I'm wanted, it's said by the law. I'm wanted, it's said by the parson. I'm wanted, it's said by a whore. I'm wanted, it's said in the tower, undrawn and quartered and law. So tip me hat, I won't be back. I'm covering up me tracks. Oh, tip me hat, slip me swag. I'm covering up me tracks. Now God in the fog on a creaking old log, on my way from the old to the new. He found me departing and offered me pardon and dipped me again in the blue. I rose from the sea without sorrow. I rose from the sea without woe. I rose from the sea without trousers and patting about for me smokes. I swore at the heavens above me. I swore at the sea down below. Oh, tip me hat when I look back. She was covering up me tracks. Oh, tip me hat when I look back. She was covering up my tracks. Now I pine for the gum and the gold, I am told. I pine for the snow cap and lake. I pine for the carry, I'm happy as Larry. I pine nonetheless for the grape. I pine for the tui, a little bit chewy. I pine for the kitty who fat. Archival scrap, why bother with that? I'm covering up me tracks. Archival scrap, hey, with that. I'm covering up me tracks. I've eaten and eaten, I've failed in Wales. I'm the son of a duke and an heir. I fought for the king, that has a nice ring. Now lend me a bob or an ear. I'm little Bo Peep, for I have tucked the black sheep. I'm Red Riding Hood, I'm the wolf. I'm home between homes on the take on the roam. I'm making it up on the hoof. I've said far too much, such and such, not enough. Let's leave it at that for all that. Old hat is old hat. I'll button me trap. I'm covering up me trap. Old hat is old hat, why bother with that? I'm covering up me tracks. Hey! How you going? Are you hanging in there? I can read some poems out of books if you would like. Yeah. Shall we have a couple more and then maybe if there's a question or two, and then, yeah, I can always read a poem out of a book. Don't be shy.
That's a woman.
Yeah.
One in green at the back.
Oh, wow. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. The women cross their hands. And the men. Yeah. So, well, this is a great one to choose. Hardly anyone chooses this one. Yeah. Because she's quite sort of simple. But great to choose her in a bookshop. Because this is Iris Wilkinson, or Robin Hyde. And the writer in me has always been a little bit in love with Robin Hyde. I remember when I was a young writer going to the Going West Festival in Auckland, and Derek Challis, who was Iris Wilkinson's son, was giving a talk about his mum. And I'd never really heard much about her life. I knew her writing, but never really heard much of her life. And projected a big picture of his mum on the screen, and she was a beautiful woman. And telling the story of her life and looking at her with us, and that sense of a son searching for his mum, because she died when, she adopted him out when he was born. So he never really knew his mum, and you could see that he'd spent much of his adult life trying to find out about her and know about her. And Iris was a really talented writer, but she kind of lived 100 years too early. If she'd lived a life now, it was a very 21st century life, and she had a couple of children out of wedlock, and she had to give those children away. And she had an accident and damaged her leg, and so she was given morphine for the pain, and she became a morphine addict. And she had lots and lots of sadness in her life, and she ended up going to, she was in Nanking during the rape of Nanking, and she reported on that for a newspaper in London. Then she went to London, and she took her life when she was, I think, about 39 years of age in Notting Hill in London. And I remember reading up lots about her when I was looking at writing about her. Because I remember sitting in that theatre listening to the story and being moved by her. And I don't know, maybe I'm just a weird person, but it's sort of like I just had that feeling of falling a little bit in love back in time with her, thinking, God damn it, Iris, I wish I could meet you somewhere in Bolton Street in Wellington. And she grew up in Berrenport in Wellington and Lyle Bay. And so I wrote this song for her. And I remember going to London when I was in London, going and finding her grave. And she's just a simple grave, and it says a New Zealand writer on her tombstone. And making a small pilgrimage there. So this is my oral poem, Waiatatangi, for Iris, and about falling in love back in time with somebody, which is a lovely thing to do. I kind of walk around with Iris from time to time. It's called Letter to Iris Wilkinson. In Berrenport, among the pool, the little houses stack. In Lyle Bay, the seagulls play. What net can hold that catch? In Lyle Bay, the seagulls play. What net can hold that catch? For I am here, and you are there. Who knows what lies between? Did we once meet on Bolton Street? For all's not all it seems. Did we once meet on Bolton Street? For all's not all it seems. In Sydney town, once I went down to hear the Tasman call. The heft, the heave, the weft, the weave, the gods bereaved the roar. The heft, the heave, the weft, the weave, how unrelieved the roar. For I am well, the tui swell, the southerly drops in, while we drink tea on Lambton Quay. I sip, you sip, we grin, while we drink tea on Lambton Quay. I sip, you sip, we grin. In Notting Hill, I sing you still, from sorrow, soil and stone. Inside your eyes, the godwits hide, now let them rest a while. Inside your eyes, the godwits fly, Here let them rest a while, for I am here, and you are there. Who knows what lies between? Did we once meet on Bolton Street? For all's not all it seems. Did we once dance in Plymouth Park? What's been has been still clings. Did we once meet on Bolton Street? For all's not all it seems. It's a lovely, for a doctor, it's a lovely way of bringing back the dead. It's like, yeah, I will try, if someone does sort of collapse, we will try some traditional therapies first. But if you hear singing, you're in big trouble. It's like, oh, well, let's just sing. Okay. Now, after the adrenaline comes singing. Shall we have one more? Anyone down the back, man?
The Tani in the middle, bit of Tani.
Yep, there's two Tani here.
The one that's four.
Yeah, this one. Oh, cool. Yeah. This is one of my favourite songs to sing. I grew up in South Auckland, and one of the, what I think of them as oral poetries now, one of the best oral poetries growing up in South Auckland was the ukulele song. Yeah, because I would go down to Waitara markets, and the ukulele songs, books of EC, and the ukulele songs would be pounding out, and there was a joy in them. And so when I thought of the songs for Myths and Legends, of the different sung genres, I thought, it'd be cool to have a ukulele song. And this man is called Tupua Tamasese Leorofi the Third. And I don't know if you know the story of Black Saturday in New Zealand, but he was a high chief in Samoa, and he led a independence movement back in the 1920s for Samoan independence. It was called the Moor Movement. And New Zealand took over the administration of Samoa after the First World War from Germany, or during the First World War from Germany. And our record of administration was pretty poor there. And yeah, we stepped on lots of toes and kind of administered Samoa in a pretty authoritarian way. And that culminated, of course, in allowing the flu into Samoa when we knew it was on a ship called the SS Taluni, and we didn't quarantine the ship or require it to be quarantined, and we let people go ashore from that boat in a fairly casual way. Other Pacific countries have refused to let it go. They knew the flu was on board. And 1 in 4 people in Samoa died. Yeah, a quarter of the population died in the flu epidemic. Which just added fuel to the fire. The Moor had been around even during German occupation, and was a movement for independence. Tamasese was exiled by the New Zealand government and for a period of time, and then they decided to let him come back to Samoa, and he came back to Samoa in 1929 on a day called Black Saturday, and he had a big gathering of supporters met him, and they marched down one of the main streets of Apia, and the New Zealand police were there, and they had a Gatling gun, a Lewis gun, and things got pretty tense, and one of the policemen fired a shot, and it was all on, and they fired the Lewis gun into the crowd, and they killed a number of people. And Tamasese put his arms up to call for peace, and he got shot in the back and died. And so the incident became known, as Black Saturday. Then there was rioting. I think one policeman got killed as well. And there was rioting until things settled down. But eventually the Samoa got independence. And I think it was his brother who became the first Prime Minister or first leader of Samoa. And Helen Clark a few years back apologised on behalf of New Zealand for its record of administration. But in the songs too, I chose to sing about things that I think sometimes in our cultures we only sing songs about conquering and victory and doing what we think are great things. And I think the mark of a culture is to sing about, or to make markers for where we get it wrong. And I remember I chose the songs after going to Germany, and I remember being in Germany and being struck in a place, the only place I knew that built memorials to things they had got wrong. Markers to say, we cannot do this again. I haven't seen that in other countries. It's always a statue to somebody who's supposed to have conquered. So I wanted songs that said, let's not go this way again. And I also wanted to play with the idea of a ukulele song, which has an innocence to it, but tells a more powerful story. To swallow a big story to sugarcoat the pill, I suppose. But I like singing it. I hope I remember the words, and I can't resist sort of. Not that I play the guitar, but the ukulele, but it's called the Ballad of Black Saturday. Beach road, the sandals slap, centipede upon your back, spider, lizard, old man, rat, tell the story in your mat. Logan, Allen, Richardson, bred up on old Gungadin, ruled on beach road singing hymns, king and country in their skin. Brought the devil, brought the flu, brought the shit upon their shoes, wiped it on the who is who, or wiped it down on Beach Road too. Saturday down Beach Road trod, Tamassese's rolling mob, marched up to the lightning rod, bumped into old Mr. Plod. Tamassese on the rack, stretched his arms like old man Bat, prayed for peace, no time for that. The policeman sang a rat-a-tat. Sunday white, Monday blue, Tuesday brown as some old new, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday too, but Saturday is black all through. Parrot, gecko, old man ant, tell this story in your mat. Over, under, through and round, weave it into holy ground. Down, iffy, iffy, long and pretty, dead the dead lay without pity. Saturday still hears them call to Tangaloa or St. Paul. Brought the devil, brought the flu, brought the shit upon their shoes, wiped it on the who is who, or wiped it down on Beach Road too. Sunday white, Monday blue, Tuesday brown as some old new, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday too, but Saturday is black all through. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday too, but Saturday is black all through. Does anybody have any questions about any of that?
Do you have a favourite?
The favourites change around a little bit, but yeah, I like singing the Tamassese song because I feel like I'm back home, back in South Auckland. I just love the rhythms of the ukulele songs. I just need a steel guitar for it, that's all. but yeah, there's lots of different energies. I really like, probably the most joyful collection I've written is the nursery rhymes. There's a whole bunch of nursery rhymes. I'm going to have to make some more structures to hold them. But I've really loved writing for children, I think. And and that collection's called Punga's Children, and Punga in Te Ao Māori is the atua, or loose translation, God, or the atua of misshapen things, or in colloquial language, the God of ugly things. And so, of the less glamorous animals like hammerhead sharks and long thin tuna. And so I wanted to write about Punga's children and weta, just to show that I think that there's such beauty and character in all those animals as well. And I think there's a couple of things going on as I wrote. One is there's a little person in my life that I was writing to, so I was always thinking of them as I wrote. So I feel really connected. But the other thing is, I think I was also writing to the young people at the clinic that I work in. I work in a youth clinic, and I see kids who really struggle, who have had lots of difficulties, big stories that they've grown up with. And this little book is sort of a no-holds-barred essay about adverse childhood events and the kids we see who really struggle, and people dismiss them. And I think they ended up being Punga's children, and I got to sing about them in a way that's gentle, and some of their lives have been anything but gentle. So I think that was going on subconsciously as well. So I've loved the nursery rhymes. I could just sing. I took a few months off this time last year to walk to Araroa. And when we were in the huts, especially in the South Island, you're meeting people from all over, young people from all over the world. And you become this big, homeless, wandering iwi, and you see each other in the huts at night. And when they learned I was a writer and that I'd been working on the nursery rhymes, they would ask me to sing nursery rhymes to them, because everyone goes to bed fairly early because there's no TV. So I would sing them nursery rhymes in the South Island. So, and they translate across cultures, I think. And they would sing us nursery rhymes in Finnish and French and German. So I think there's something, again, that old power of the sung word to touch us regardless of whether we know what the words are saying or not. There's a rhythm in them. That what I found working on these things is that I love playing with tight rhyme, because you don't really write lots of rhyming poetry as a modern writer in English, but I got to write lots of rhyme, so I enjoyed that. But I came to realise that the rangi, the tune, is what carries most of the meaning. And I would write elaborate lyric and then have to get rid of it, because it would be too much, that the song, everybody knows what the song is by the way you sing it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you didn't need lots of elaborate metaphor. When the poem just sits at being read, then it has to work like that. But that meaning is held in the tone of voice and the rhythm and the tunes. So I don't even know what question I'm answering anymore. I've answered about 4 questions. So sorry about that. Yes, what's my favourite? The nursery rhymes, I suppose. But I've got a soft spot for a few different ones. I'm going to sing this one, if this is okay. I'm going to sing this one. I hope I get it right. I want to sing this one because this is where these songs came from, and this is quite different. And this is a mōteatea, which in Te Reo Māori means longing. there's a whole genre of poetry called Mōteatea, which belongings, which I think is just the best name for poetry, belongings. And this is written, I remember doing some research on the ploughmen of Parihaka, and spending some time in Dunedin and finding out that some of those ploughmen from Parihaka were taken down to Dunedin, and also from other incidences, uprisings and civil disobedience in Taranaki, other Māori were taken. There were waves of prisoners taken down there, and they helped. One group helped to build the inner harbour there, and were cracking rocks and put on hard labour, and helped build the Portobello Road, if you know that area. And so I worked with a group of girls and their teacher from New Plymouth Girls High School, some of whom were from Parihaka, and I wrote the Mōteatea in English, and they translated it into Te Reo Māori and gave it a rangi, and then they performed it for their kapahaka competition. So I'm going to sing this one because I'll sing it in Te Reo Māori and then recite it in English. Just to give you, this is the sort of thing I would hear at Te Tea, and it's what first made me think, oh my God, there's such a power in a sung poem. And, I guess ever since then, I always try and make the point that New Zealand has two poetries, that we often only ever talk about one poetry. But there's thousands of songs and poems, oral poems, and even my daughter who has whakapapa Māori on her mum's side and went to kura and did kapahaka, and even her, I'm always saying to her, baby, this is literature, these are poems, and she's like, Dad, it's kapahaka. and it's like, baby, they're poems, and it's like, Dad, you think everything's a poem. So even sometimes when I talk to Māori, they're like, oh my God, shut up, Glenn. But these are, these are part of the canon. This is the Old Testament of poetry. Waiatatangi, mā te tahi kai parau o Parihaka I Ōtāka. E tā toro anō nei, ko koe rere aro rangi au, ki te rangi te ki. I nā tiro whakararo kiki mō aku kamo, nei rā ko puki kura, nei rā ko pungare u. Te tōka ki raro I taku kuru hama nei, ki te whakawhiti-whitia I tō tāua tūnaka tāri anoho au I puku tāri anoho au a muri ake au I ka takahuri pēa nuku kia heki naki Parihaka. Reira ko taku tama e tipu tāro ana au. Nei rā ko taku tau e kiko kore ana ai. Te kino hoki o taku mana wānui e. Me koe hoki tangaroa ki te tihore ake tēnei kiriruha. Ka tahuri atu rāu. Tai atu rā ki tai aroa tere ana ki te ika. Anō nei ko te ika. Kei wai tō tora maro ke hie te haua matangi. Heki aki ki runga a Taranaki. Kia parau anō tia taku awa nā. Au e tau kiri e, he tangata no ahau, ka apakura atu nei au I. Whaki atu ki, era e pā mai nei, he tangata no ahau, ka apakura atu nei au I. Tōroa, if I were you, I would fly so high that when I looked down, I could close my eye on Pukikura, there, on Pungarehu, there, and stone beneath my hammer blows. If we were to ever swap places, I would also wait, inscrutable. One day, the earth might roll over, give rise to me once more at Pariaka, where my son grows tall, where my wife grows lean. My patience would be terrible. And even you, see, if I was ever to slip this worn-out skin, I would roll all the way to Taiaroa, swim like a fish to the fish. At Waitōtara, the wind might dry, carry me upwards over Taranaki, to plough again my furrow there. But alas, I am a man, and so I sing. Tell all those who gather here this, I am a man, and so I sing. So you've got to go and look up those old Morte. You know, they say there's such great stories. Yeah, great stories. There's a great collection that were last translated into English by Peter Hurinui Jones and Apirana Ngata. And AUP has reprinted them from time to time. And they had, well, last time I looked, they had CDs, but I don't know if the technology's changed, but they're all recorded from over 100 years ago from different iwi. But every iwi's got their own, and some they hold on to really tight, some they spread out into the world, and each iwi is defined and known by their Morte. When I go to literary festivals, I never see Māori talking about their puppetry. I'm like, why not? Because these are amazing metaphors, amazing illusions, wonderful stories, and great arguments, you know, and has so much to inform us about poetry, you know, in English, send us back to the roots of our own poetry, and its power as a sung form as well. So I always, you know, to me, that's the tuakana poetry, to my myths and legends, and to my ukulele songs and all that exploration. And again, my experience that Māori have only ever pointed me back to find out some of that, some of what was lost to me as Pākehā, some of that connection, some of that connection to landscape, yeah? Some of that vulnerability, that like, rip your skin off, man, you know? That find the sense of the indigenous, of being from somewhere, and bring your people out. Worry about filling out forms later. Yeah? Less of the forms, brothers, sisters, less forms, more singing. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yeah. I reckon that's probably enough, eh?
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm just sneaking through my name. So, thank you very, very much for sharing your poetry, your singing. These, they are absolutely fabulous. It's been really, really insightful, and yeah, thank you so, so much. If you would like to buy a book, please do. If you'd like to have a chat, please do. If you'd like some refreshments, they're here. So thank you all so much for coming, and thank you.
Awesome, thank you.